Hey, yo, welcome to Cross Politic. It's good to be back in the studio.
You sound like you're waking up.
So we're going to talk about red flag laws. You guys been hearing about that?
Is that like the Green New Deal?
I hope not.
There's some similarities there. It's the government telling us what to do.
Rainbow flag?
Bombshell. Bombshell report from Mueller.
Oh, it was a bombshell.
Did you hear about the bombshell report?
Bombshell.
The walls closing in.
Bombshell.
And then we got more Jussie.
Hashtag Jussie Smollett.
Yep. You guys been following that on Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Share the show now. What's wrong with you? Share the show.
Like he got the stinger.
I thought he was mad at you for turning the music
I was
off.
like, what did I do?
I was like, golly, come on.
This episode, what is it? Who's it brought by? It's got to be brought by like Tapped.
It's brought by Tapped.
There we go.
Tapped is in downtown Moscow. And if you're coming out for Grace Agenda.
Yes. Which is April 5th and 6th.
It's just like in like 10 days.
10 days.
Like coming up really fast here. You can go by there. And how many beers do they have on tap?
A lot.
Like 30 or something?
And they got some expensive ones. They get some like
fancy beers?
Fancy, crafted.
Okay.
Nitro.
I got to talk about this real quick.
Nitro.
The best drink there, and I drink beer, but the best drink there is their root beer on tap.
What?
Ooh.
Oh. Really?
Woo!
Oh, man.
You ain't had root beer.
You sound like you've been in Florida or something.
Let's just say I missed some tap root beer.
Talking about root beer.
Yeah. Hey, what were you doing in Florida real quick?
What were you doing? Out there helping some brothers out, you know.
Yeah.
Helping some brothers.
You know.
Tom and Jared?
Yeah, founders.
Yeah, Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry.
I didn't say that. I was helping the Don at SBC.
the Don of the SBC. Ooh.
All right, so red flag laws.
What's this?
This is something that's
talking about.
Kind of been brought to my attention. A couple of listeners over the past couple of months kind of brought it up. And
Matt Shea, I'm telling you, man, we had Matt Shea on the show, and he talked about it.
I forgot about that.
I'm telling you.
So, but some of our listeners reminded us, and it's kind of going under the radar.
Yeah.
And basically, so what's happening these next couple of weeks? Senator Lindsey Graham has announced that to the Senate Judiciary Committee that they're scheduling a hearing on Senate Bill 7. So Senate Bill 7 is Extreme Risk Protection Order and Violence Prevention Act of 2019, which is otherwise known as red flag laws.
Wait, we say Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham.
Right. I said Lindsey
Republican.
Graham.
Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham. And the bill was first introduced in the Senate by Marco Rubio.
Wait. So this is why it's going under the table, though.
Right.
Because it's our folks who are doing it.
It's conservative Christians. And so the red flag bill is a gun confiscation bill. It's a gun confiscation bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What?
A gun confiscation
Not my guns.
bill. It allows for the government to confiscate arms from an American citizen who has not been charged with a crime on the basis of one testimony.
Whoa, that's a problem.
Thin evidence.
One testimony that says, I'm afraid this person might do something bad. I think he's emotionally unstable. I don't think he should be able to have a gun. And a judge can listen to the testimony of one person, which is frequently a family member or someone close to them. And you think about like an ex-wife, I mean, with all of the
angry girlfriend.
Yeah, right.
Which you shouldn't have.
Ex-husband. I mean, whatever. I mean, the possibilities here in our lovely Me Too climate. Are endless.
Right.
And actually, it's funny
nothing bad can happen.
Well,
nothing bad can happen.
Exactly.
This could not be misused.
Not for the person who's testifying against you.
Yeah. and they come back and they say, well, you can appeal it.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Next week or next month, we'll set up a date for you.
We'll take your gun first, and then you can appeal it.
Why do I have to appeal something that, again,
exactly.
I shouldn't have to appeal this? Why are you putting all the responsibility on me?
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is what happens is it's completely reversed presumption of innocence.
Right.
So now you have to prove that you're not crazy and unstable and about to commit a crime.
Yeah.
But it flips it entirely on its head.
How long have you been beating your wife?
Right, exactly. All right. You can come appeal it. Right. It's all right.
When are you going to stop drinking?
Yeah, right. When are you going to stop being a drunk? When are you going to stop beating your wife? When are you going to stop thinking about using your guns to commit a crime?
Yeah.
I haven't done that.
But this makes, again, going back to Matt Shea when we had him on the show talking about this makes Washington is huge for me now because I need to be paying attention. What are they practicing on that they're trying to bring out to the rest of the nation?
Oh, yeah. Washington is practicing stuff for conservatives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, ouch.
Yep.
Ouch. I didn't
Marco
think about
Rubio's
it like that.
what are they doing in Seattle?
Oh man.
Ouch.
Oh what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
This is why a good definition of a Republican is someone who will adopt Democratic policies 10 years later.
Or 5.
Or 5.
Or
yeah.
3.
Well, and this is the thing too, President Trump right now, the reason that these can kind of pass and get through unmarked, or I think when Obama was in office, all this stuff when he first got elected, you know how many guns were sold just out of the fear of him taking them?
I mean, he got elected and gun prices
spiked.
Everybody ran out and got their guns.
I couldn't find 9mm ammo anywhere in the stores. I was hunting for it.
Oh, yeah.
But so
That's
long as
funny.
we have somebody who is pro-life, most of us kind of sit back and relax and say, okay, we got a president who's pro-life. That's the thing that we care about. But
we can chill now.
We can chill.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so, but President Trump is, because we think, hey, he's not going to, if we decide to make states' right an issue for the issue of life, and we say we're going to function like that, we can assume that the president, having conservatives in office, are not going to come after us.
Right.
But what we don't think is that what if these guys want to take away our guns?
Right. Which is what Trump
and that's
is doing.
That's what he's doing
With the
right
bump
now.
stocks.
On Tuesday, his bump stock ban went into effect.
This week.
This last Tuesday, March 26th.
Yeah.
Under
No more
the
bump
current
stocks.
ban that is now in effect, owning, buying, selling, or transferring a bump stock is illegal in the United States of America.
Except for Idaho.
Owners
We're gonna
of
see
bump
about that.
stocks, owners of bump stocks must destroy or return their bump stocks to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, ATF, with no compensation, or else face felony charges.
Wow.
Which, by the way, is also theft.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you spent money to buy a bump stock
And they're going to take it
build
from you.
you have to turn it in,
And they're stealing from you.
and there's no compensation or face felony charges, and a violation of this could include $250,000 fine in addition to a 10-year prison sentence.
Oh, man.
So I wonder.
For a bump stock.
Trump did this.
And we let him.
And where are the conservatives telling Trump that he
Wow.
must not?
We're passing laws now. We're trying to get laws passed to take away our guns.
Marco Rubio says, oh, wait, hold on. I got something better.
I can help
Hold
you.
my beer.
Yeah.
Root beer. Hold my root beer.
Hold my root beer. How about you can just take their guns without asking?
Well, it's no coincidence that this is coming out of Florida, where they've had some serious gun violence
yeah.
in their schools. And so Marco Rubio is trying to look like the savior for Florida.
Remember, he got tagged pretty big for.
Yeah. And so he's trying to figure out a way to appease.
So speaking of
The
root
liberals.
beer, speaking of root beer, Idaho Senate Bill 1332 from 2014, which talked about this. You like that
I
transition?
like that transition.
Speaking of root beer,
Oh, man.
so remember
bunch of sugar.
Remember our friend Heather Scott, Representative Heather Scott, who serves in Idaho, introduced the
Guns and babies.
Guns and babies.
well, it's guns, but what's the name of her act?
Oh, that's
Human rights. It's
Abolish. It's not abolish.
We just messed
human
that up.
rights. Yeah, Sorry, Heather, we love you.
And abortion.
The end abortion bill.
In Idaho.
Dave's gonna find it for us.
Yes, I am.
But she introduced it with a short video called "Guns and Babies," where she said, in 2014, Idaho passed and Governor Butch Otter signed into law Senate Bill 1332, which was a federal nullification law.
Yep.
Idaho Abortion Human Rights Act.
Very good. Sorry. Again, that's the law. But she said in 2014, we signed this law, which said that if the feds overreach our Second Amendment rights with regard to guns, we nullify, we will not enforce that law in the state of Idaho. In fact, it includes also a threat of a fine and prosecution for Idaho law enforcement officials who comply
With federal law.
with the federal
And
law,
not with this new state law.
It's infringing upon Second Amendment rights. And Heather Scott's point was, Idaho, we did this with guns.
Why not babies?
Why can't we do this with babies?
Right.
Which was a great play, great move, great point. But my question is so Idaho, what's she going to do about this bump stock ban?
And the red flag laws.
And I mean, but we got a bump stock ban now.
Yeah,
The
right.
red flag's still in
They
discussion.
can still come. Yeah,
But
right.
but what are we going to do about the bump stock ban?
Well, remember we had Scott on the show who was part of helping getting that bill pushed through and actually writing the bill, help write the bill for Heather. Yeah, and he said that it was just a fluff law. He didn't think that Idaho would actually stand against the federal government. When
that's
it came
the question.
time.
That's the question.
And
So,
But there's penalties built in.
right.
But is Idaho
Which is interesting.
is that bill that we passed a nullification law that said if the feds overreach Second Amendment rights, this is the test right here.
Well, what I would do all of a sudden, I would take, if I had a bump stock company I would immediately relocate my company to Idaho.
Yep.
Right outside Boise, right in Boise.
Right outside the area.
Right out the Capitol building.
Absolutely.
I'm just making bump stocks over here.
And that's what I'm doing.
And they're for sale.
And
the law's going to protect me.
I would force Idaho to protect me. Because what was it, 16,000 or something like that? A company is turning in 16,000?
Well, there was 60,000.
No, but a company.
Well, there was one particular company I was reading about in Texas. Dun, 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 dun. Deep in the heart.
No. You only play that when I win, all right, man?
A company called RW Arms, leading retailer of bump stocks in Fort Worth, Texas, turned over its inventory of 60,000 bump stocks to ATF to be shredded and recycled under the supervision of ATF agents.
This is wicked.
I would put Idaho.
Guys, this is like communism.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like turn over your bump stocks and we will not pay you for them.
And what they're doing is I don't have the equitable gun to meet to defend myself if the government decides to come and attack my family.
The Second Amendment was written in 1789, 1787. The whole point of it was that people would have the ability to defend themselves against a tyrannical government.
Yeah, that's right. That was the intention.
That was the intention. Mm-hmm. We had just fought a war with a tyrannical government.
Yep.
The point of having firearms and the right to bear arms was not so that colonists could go hunting.
And this doesn't mean you need a little .22 pistol.
That's right.
No,
right. This means you get an equitable ability to respond.
So they're not protecting our rights if they say, well, you can have BB guns.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the fear, especially for people who are conservatives, are like, but do you want somebody roaming out there with a machine gun?
Yes, I do.
And I said, yeah, if you have one, I definitely would like that. Yeah. I know what kind of person you are.
Yeah. I would love to have a tank.
Somebody said, but they have one. But I got one too, homie.
Yeah. I'm going to have an F-16 in my backyard.
I don't mind sitting in the backyard.
Just
DJ,
in case.
DJ, clean the F-16 tonight, son. All right. Vacuum out next to
the big problem here is all of this stuff is preventative law.
That's it. Yeah.
Which is not biblical at all.
That's right.
The Bible does not. Its law code is not preventative.
Right.
Primarily. Now, penalties themselves have a preventative effect.
Right.
You see, the rapist.
Get the death penalty.
The murderer get the death penalty.
Yep.
You're going to think 2, 3, 4 times before, maybe I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Because they're actually enforcing the law.
Right.
So it has a preventative thing, but it's primarily punitive.
Right.
Biblical law is primarily punitive. Even the law that says that you had to have a fence around your roof.
Yeah.
And the idea was, and it said that if somebody falls off your roof, because they, in those days they partied on the roof.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was like
we need to go back to that.
It was like, like the deck,
Yeah.
And it says if somebody falls off and they die, you're liable for their blood.
Mm-hmm. But I can't go around to your house and be like, ticket.
That's right.
There's no roof.
There's no ticketing.
Yeah.
There's no ticketing for no fences.
Yeah.
Right. But if somebody dies, you are liable. So it's not preventative. There's a law that says you need to have it.
Yeah.
But there's nobody going around ticketing.
That's really important.
And that's the thing too, because then you get the punishment.
You do.
You get the full ride of the punishment. So if you do have a fence around your roof, guess what? You tried.
You did.
You did. And so it's not necessarily responsible on you.
Well, here's the thing. The preventative law starts in the family. That's where the preventative enforcement comes from.
And
right.
Well, there's some of that. I think this is a nanny state.
Yeah.
This is the nanny state thing. And I really do think that, there's the thing. I think in a home and in a family, actually, I think families can have family rules.
Yeah.
That are, and I think especially when kids are young and you need mom to nurture and protect a little one.
Right.
Sure.
And I think that's where you need a nanny.
Right.
Yep.
That's where you need mom's law.
Yeah.
Right.
But remember also we remember C.R. Wiley, who's coming to Grace Agenda.
Yes.
Remember he said it's really good for mother's law to be there when they're young, but that needs to be handed off to the father.
We're past that stage.
And the father needs to protect his children in some measure from that overreaching mothering.
Right.
The mothering will be smothering.
Yeah.
Message.
I just did that.
You could be a poet.
Yeah.
Poet didn't know it.
But this is the nanny state, and it's being led by conservative Christians.
Yeah. So speaking of root beer at Tapped.
Yeah. And Grace Agenda and C.R. Wiley.
The Mueller report. It's a bombshell report.
This president could be impeached.
Resignation. I don't think this president is going to serve out his term.
Mr. Trump will not serve out his term.
He will not serve out his term.
No way,
know-how.
Breaking news.
Absolute bombs.
Donald Trump is not. He's done. And it's over.
It's over.
The wall's closing in.
The wall's closing in. This is going to be the Achilles heel.
Breaking news tonight. I expect Trump to depart.
This week will be the watershed week.
Trump is in big trouble.
Trump's in a lot of trouble.
It's a sign of a terrified old man who feels the
walls
closing in. The walls
are increasingly
closing in on him.
Tonight, the walls
are closing in.
Today changed everything. This is the beginning of the end. Today, the biggest
tipping point for the Trump administration.
What a historic day. The bombshells.
He's underwater. He feels the walls closing in.
Turning point.
We may be at a tipping point.
It's the beginning of
the end.
The beginning
of the end.
Another bombshell.
Bombshell. Bombshell. Bombshell.
Bombshell.
Bombshell.
bombshell. This is a bombshell.
All right. You get the point.
Bombshell.
You get the point. Tipping point.
You know what
walls
this is
are closing in.
Do you remember the video that went around right after Trump got elected? With all of the news anchors saying
he's never going to get
he'll
elected.
never be elected, never be elected. He's a bozo.
That's
never
good.
be elected, never be elected, never be elected, never be elected.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're doing it again.
And
I just want a video go around saying, I'm sorry, we were wrong.
Yeah.
I just want 2 videos like that now.
Well, did that happen when Trump was elected?
No, ain't going to happen.
No.
Is it going to happen now?
So you remember this is a 2-year Mueller investigation on the idea that Trump was in collusion with Russia to win the election. Yeah. So it's a 2 so Trump has been under investigation basically the month before he got into the White House.
Wow.
Like this started before he even got into the White House. And so we have 2 years investigation. Finally Mueller comes out. He had 49 lawyers on this case. And he interviewed over 500 people as part of this investigation.
Dealt with other nations.
Yep. So I think it is pretty thorough. And the report specifically said that there was no Russia collusion.
Yeah.
Right.
Now it didn't clear him of obstruction of justice, but that wasn't the focus of the report.
That wasn't Mueller's charge to invest. It was his original charge was just to investigate collusion.
Right. But here's the thing for me on this: to take 2 years to investigate a sitting president. And remember, this investigation started off of a fake dossier file.
Yeah.
Like a file that was
wow.
It was fake. It wasn't real.
It was fabricated.
Built off of ICNN reports.
And so now this investigation
and these news reporters are just reporting on themselves. Like I heard somebody that said this, and I heard somebody that said this.
ICNN, the whole idea was that it was based on like you and I could be ICNN. We just grab our phone, go do a story, and this is what we see. So it could be propagated by somebody who's not even a real journalist.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's what kicked this all off.
Yeah.
And so one of the central problems I have with this is that it took 2 years. Yeah. If Justice Ecclesiastes, we've talked about this before on the show, Ecclesiastes, I think it's 8:11 or 11:8. It's either 8:11 or 11:8. If justice is not brought justice needs to be brought speedily.
How long do you think it should have took though? What would speedily look like in this particular situation with all this?
Well, I think once the dossier files came out as fake, I would have been like, we're dropping this.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? You can't base a 2-year investigation off of fake.
Was that the only thing though?
Well, that was one of the big things that started it all.
That was
that's what they took before the judge to be able to get the green light to do the investigation.
That was what everybody put a lot of their weight on.
Yeah, that's right. That's what the judge put a lot of weight on.
It's hard for me to know like what a reasonable timeline is for doing an investigation like this. I mean, the whole thing is like shot through with politics and craziness.
Yep.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe 2 years is too long.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to consider it. I just don't know that it is.
What's amazing, though, is that it did take 2 years. It was thorough, and still the Democrats are like, it's not enough.
Well,
for real.
But here's the thing. Typically, the longer something goes like this, the more you think, oh, it's going to be bad.
Right.
Like it's going to be corrupt.
Gonna really get
like they got bought and they got, and owned, and then it comes out and he says, no collusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that's pretty impressive, actually.
I got to say something. In the Me Too culture where everybody, word counts, and without 2 or 3 witnesses, you got to research everything, and knowing who you're dealing with, the Democrats, I'm glad that he did a very thorough investigation and something like this, because nothing matters. And now they're actually talking about, we don't trust, Mueller in this situation because they want what they want.
Right.
I would have thought that if this comeback is negative, aren't you the kind of person who really seeks after justice, that you would have said, you know what? We've had an investigation. It was thorough. We trust the people who did it. And, guys, we didn't find anything.
And we were wrong.
Yeah. I'm so happy to be wrong about something like this.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what we want, because we honestly aren't, in one sense.
Can you play that link where they say they're so happy that can you play that one?
That we don't have a president that colluded with Russia. Play that one.
We're so glad.
I can't find it.
Oh.
Can't find it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh.
But instead what they're saying is, Since it didn't meet what we want to keep looking and find something. But that's not how justice works. Justice says, look, here's the accusation that's set out. We have 2 or 3 witnesses. Let's find out if this is true or not, which in this case is kind of weird because we had a special investigation instead of actually going to court. Right. And Mueller just said, hey, there wasn't even enough evidence to convict.
Right. This was just to bring evidence to the attorney general to see if there should be anything that should be brought to court.
Right.
To see if you could there was anything to indict the president.
It's like the Jussie Smollett case.
Well, no, they actually had reason to indict.
But they're going to charge him in court, right?
No, that's all been sealed.
Well,
what?
But again, at the end of the day, it's Mr. Smollett who committed this hoax, period. If he wanted to clear his name, the way to do that was in a court of law so that everyone could see the evidence. You all know what the bond proffer said. We all know what it said. So, I stand by the facts of what we produce. If they want to dispute those facts, then the place to do that is in court, not secrecy.
So Jussie Smollett was just released. Basically, a trial is not going. He's not going to be going to trial. If you guys remember, the
charges were all dropped.
The charges were dropped.
16 charges.
He lost his $10,000 bail, and he has to do a little bit of community service, and that's it.
Why does he have to do community service?
It's the deal they brokered.
Why can't he keep his bail?
They're appeasing. They're trying to appease something.
Is he innocent?
A grand jury indicted Jussie Smollett, saying that there's enough evidence here that this should go to trial.
Right.
Kind of like what was going on with Trump with the DOJ.
No. But they didn't even get that far.
They didn't even get that far.
Right.
Trump got far enough to where they said, we aren't going to trial. We aren't even taking this before the grand jury.
Right. There's nothing to bring to a grand jury.
Grand jury.
Well, Smollett
Smollett had enough evidence. That was Chicago chief of police that was talking here on the video. And they had enough evidence. They brought to the grand jury, and the grand jury said, yes, this should go to trial. There's enough evidence here to go to trial.
Do you think that the chief of police kind of shot himself in the foot?
Absolutely.
I mean, do you remember when he was first arrested and he went out and he was did that press conference and he was like, this guy is guilty.
Yep. And now,
I think you brought this up actually, Chuck, when we talked about this when it first happened.
Yeah. Like, hold on. Wait, why don't you just say this is the evidence? This is what it's presenting to us. We want to give it to the DA and let the DA go ahead and bring it.
For example, what are the chances that Jussie Smollett could have a fair trial in Chicago?
After the police chief came out publicly.
After the police chief came out and all the politicization of it all. Yeah. What are the chances?
It was game over. He couldn't. But,
And so, the whole thing, part of me is like, I'm sort of back and forth on this because it looks terrible for him. Like he actually did this. He set this up. It was a hoax, fake hate crime. And at the same time, there's probably likely no chance that he could get a fair trial.
If you're in Chicago, you should be a little up in arms right now. This is your problem, Chicago. You don't want to live in a world where true justice doesn't exist. You don't want to live in the world where somebody can go to court with accusations against them and everybody walk away and say they don't matter. You don't want to walk in the world and look at the guy next to you and say, I don't know if he's innocent or guilty. Let's break bread.
Right.
I don't want to live in a world where I can't tell if I'm dealing with a criminal or a guy who's upright. And right now we have an environment where this can breed.
Right.
Well, you don't want to live in that world, and not requiring them to do justice is going to make this a lot. The fallout from this is not just with Jussie and the police department.
Yep.
This is with a whole city.
Yep.
How are they going to look at your kids?
Right.
How are they going to look at you when you do business?
Yeah.
You want justice because you can't define who's good and who's bad.
Well, Jussie's just got this cloud hanging over his head now. It was probably
that just tells you what kind of man Jussie is.
Yeah. He'd rather have this cloud.
He'd rather have this cloud than say, I've been innocent. Yep. I've been proven innocent. They didn't find nothing on me.
Yeah.
He can't say that.
He did in his press conference. When after the deal was brokered, he went out on his press conference and said, I have been innocent. I've been consistent. I have not lied.
Why are you doing community service if you're innocent?
Yep.
Did you just jump up and say, you know what I'm going to do for y'all? Since y'all, got me all wrong and everything, I'm going to give you some community service. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you my $10,000.
Yeah.
Why? Where's your $10,000 at, fam?
Yep.
Oh, they got it. Why they got your $10K and sealed your records, bruh?
Yep.
You innocent?
Yeah.
Shut your mouth. You got no time for that.
You have I'm just thinking of what the Bible says. You shall not circulate a false report. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Mm-hmm. You shall not follow a crowd to do evil.
Right.
Nor shall you testify in a dispute so as to turn aside after many to pervert justice. You shall not show partiality to a poor man in his dispute. You shall not pervert justice. This is Deuteronomy 16 now. You shall not show partiality or take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. You shall follow what is altogether just, so that you may live and inherit the land which the Lord your God is giving you.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's another thing, too. Talk about why your land is cursed. This thing, here's the truth, though. What we're seeing with Jussie is only evidence that this has been broken before he ever got there.
Yep.
You know, that's
really what when you have Rahm Emanuel.
What in the world was
like
that?
Standing there being like, justice. I saw a tweet, the guy's like, I did not think that my day was going to go this way. 100% agreeing with Rahm Emanuel.
When I saw that, I was like, what? But I felt something was wrong.
No, Chicago, I mean, this is messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not justice. And this is because families and churches have failed to insist upon justice, living out justice in their own family, living out justice in the church, requiring two witnesses, requiring cross-examination.
Yeah, the church hasn't been discipling our own families. And how would we disciple the world about how this is supposed to go?
We have insisted that the world would do injustice.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have insisted
We've discipled them that way.
We have discipled them that way.
The world would do it.
And so here we are.
Hey, don't we have Gary DeMar?
I was going to say that. Coming up this Sunday, Gary DeMar, he's in town. We're shooting a special little thing with him. And we're going to talk about
Gary DeMar?
Yeah, we're going to talk about guiding government. We should bring some of this stuff up with him.
In the studio.
We'll talk about this with
Gary
DeMar.
We should talk to Ocasio-Cortez Green Deal with him.
Well, we'll talk about eschatology. Post-millennialism.
We'll get him all over the place.
Did you guys see that guy with the Reagan riding the dragon and the
and the Tauntaun?
Until Sunday, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. Was that the 666?
Yeah. Did you guys see the article about how to talk to your teen about colluding with Russia?
No.
It's great.